And we're back once again. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web live from Midtown Manhattan. We're here with my good friend, DJ David Medina. We were just talking about how music played such a big part in his life, just emotionally, intelligently, as a young person. And I found it interesting. This is something that just came to me last night when I was doing like promo for this show, was that you provide the soundtrack to like major climactic moments in people's lives.
Hell yeah.
Where like he's a professional DJ. You do weddings, you do all kinds of like major events, you do clubs, but like it's like the night somebody got married. You provide the emotional soundtrack to that whole event. Maybe you're working Bembe one night and a couple meets that night and they get married. Have you had this situation where people are like,
yes,
you were DJing the night we met and then they hired you
to do their wedding? Yes.
Dude, that's like
yes.
deep in the psyche. And it was similar for you, your relationship with music growing up. Yeah,
that's really important what you just said, because that actually goes to the root. It just hit
me last night and I was like,
well, yeah.
Wow, go ahead.
No, that just goes to the root of what I do and why I do it.
Yeah,
but I didn't want to get there yet. I still had a journey.
Okay, cool. We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to it. We will come back to it.
So, but you were talking about music and getting into college.
So in school, in college, I was, studying art, actually focused on sculpture, focused on glass. So I was a glass blower and I made glass castings and was learning how to TIG weld and bronze and doing molds and
classic
old school.
You look good for like a 200-year-old.
I know, right? I know, right? It's that jujitsu, yo.
Right. Check it out, everybody. Sun Dojo.
Sun Dojo, Brooklyn, New York. What? Do jujitsu, work out, eat healthy,
and you'll live to be over 200.
Over 200, like me, man. So there was a friend of mine in college. He was 2 years ahead of me. I think he was a junior, and I was a freshman. And he had a radio show, but he started getting busy with his schoolwork and stuff. And I guess he wanted
on campus.
On campus.
Yeah.
On campus.
I missed the campus radio shows. Dude.
Yeah, man. And so he was like, "Hey, Dave, I know you got a lot of music. You love music. Why don't you help me with this show?" And his show was kind of like an alternative and ska show. And I was big into ska as well. Reggae, ska music, like classic stuff. And the like two-tone era specials and that stuff in the 80s.
Absolutely.
So I was like, yeah, let's do it, man. And so I got in on the show, and then he got kind of busy, or I don't know exactly what happened, but he gave up his show, and I was like, I'm keeping this. I am keeping your show. And he kind of just handed it off to me.
You're going to do the same to me.
And yeah. I'm not going to take your show. And
I'll take you down.
Well, I know. This guy's a purple belt. You got to be careful.
Purple belt.
But so I took over the show, and then the next year I revamped it and I turned it into my show, and it was a Sunday show, and I called it El Domingo Gigante.
I knew you were gonna do that, and like everybody at Alfred was like, "Why are we listening to salsa?"
Yeah. And the show was called Domingo Gigante. It was based off of this really famous like Latin show called Sábado Gigante, which was on Saturday. So I called it Domingo Gigante. But then it was like, yes, you'd hear your merengue, you'd hear your like obscure Cuban salsa from like the 1920s. I would throw on there,
and the three kids from the Bronx that were at Alfred were like, "I love you."
And I played all the salsa and merengue and stuff. But then you'd hear the Dead Kennedys, you'd hear the Bad Brains, you'd hear all this ska music that I was playing, and James Brown and Bob Marley.
Well, it's great because like the Bad Brains are really like the connective tissue between that. It's like, no, we are all the same.
We are all the same, and that was the whole point of the show. Honestly, it was like we are a one world community, and this is and it made sense to me. It made sense that you could play a salsa, merengue, and then some punk rock, and then some hardcore, and then some reggae music, and some ska music, and then maybe Nirvana, which was new at that time. And I was like, oh, Nirvana, it's all right. It's all right. It wasn't, it was cool. They were great. They're great.
That was when I tuned out. When that, that stuff hit, and I was like, now it's time to turn the radio off.
Yeah, I like the traditional, original hardcore music.
Yeah, same here.
So anyway, that was how I got into DJing. I was on the air. I used my Barry White voice. Ladies and gentlemen, this is DJ Medina in the hizzy. Yes. And so that's how it started. And I continued making art. Obviously, I graduated from school, came back to New York City.
So it was live. It was a live radio show.
It was a live radio show.
So you're used to this.
Well, I haven't done it in
but you
3 years since I.
But it's no different than when you're doing events. You have to. I mean, you're DJ. You have to talk. You're on the spot.
Really at weddings, when I do like public stuff, which I only have one public gig now. We can talk about it later. Or anything. I've been at Bembe every couple of couple of
Yeah,
nights
save it,
a
man.
month.
Don't blow it yet.
But I don't really talk there. It's no mics because if you get on the mic, it's like, can you say happy birthday to my friend over there? Like, no, go jam a drink.
So yeah, just write their name on a Benjamin.
Hey, right, and I'll wipe my face with it. Like,
Damn.
Yeah, right. No. Happy birthday to everyone out there. Really, we love you. But yeah, so I do use the mic for like, weddings, obviously, But so basically I graduated, pursued my art career, and it wasn't too bad. I was selling some work.
So what were you doing? Was it all
glass? Glass.
Was it from the artistic background or more like a production? Because I had a few friends, like I had a friend that
from the artistic. I didn't do production. I wasn't good enough to make a stem, beautiful.
Well, I had a friend that went to RIT
glass.
for ceramics.
Okay.
And her conundrum coming out was the work is in making plates.
Right.
And I don't want to do that. I want to make art.
Right.
And it was she ended up opening her own ceramic studio in the Finger Lakes. And she had it for a while. I think right now she might have sold it or like sublet it to somebody else. But that was always like I was studying music there. So for me, it was a little easier to come out working because I needed no raw materials. And back then, I mean, this was 15, 20 years ago, people still hired bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they still do.
They still do, but it really started.
Yeah, I know.
But for her, she really struggled with. Well, and it was the same for me. It was like the big paying money was all commercial, and I'd gone to school for art music. I didn't go to Berkeley to learn how to be like a pop musician. It was art music, and so I had that battle as well. But it was a little easier to make quick cash that way.
Totally.
So what was your experience with that?
Well, it was difficult. I graduated. I mean, I wanted to be a glass and metal and bronze artist making sculptures. And actually, it was kind of interesting because I've had luck along the way. It's not just planning, because I worked hard to get into school and stay in school and graduate honors, And I went from hating high school and not doing anything there because it was terrible. I'm sorry to my old professors that I actually did like in high school, and I really worked hard in college. I focused. I think after my sophomore year, I was like, no, I got to really start working and stop hanging out with the knuckleheads there too.
Eat blue cheese
all night. And I really focused, and I really got into my work. I became vice president of the Latin organization there.
There were only four of you.
Yeah, there was only four of us. No, there was a few more. There was a few more, maybe 20 or something. 20 or 30 of us, I think. But by joining the organization, I was able to bring like speakers. I brought artists from New York City to bring a little culture to this, little town in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
And I brought some bands. I actually brought a ska band up there. I brought up Mephistopheles, if anyone remembers them. Amazing band. They were like satanic ska from New York. It was a joke. Okay. It was just a joke, but it was fun. They were like hardcore ska. Yeah. And I brought them up, and it was like they didn't believe in Satan. Who believes in
I know.
Satan? Really, come on. But and yeah, so that's I got into the whole thing with music up there. But when I graduated, I pursued my art career. I got a fellowship at Urban Glass, which is in Brooklyn. Nice. If you're interested in glass, go to Urban Glass. And it was like a whole year of school, paid for.
Right.
It was amazing. Right. I was like, wow. I applied, with my basically my senior show was what I used, those images and the work I made. And I was making like these big pieces based off of my heritage, like Dominican culture, Afro-Dominican culture. So it's like these masks with blown glass, bronze masks with neon tubes and moving kinetic sculptures with moving motors. It was really fun.
Nice.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I was very into it,
So it was art.
And it was art with a capital A.
And you were selling it?
No. No, not yet. Not yet. I sold a couple,
and that's why he became a DJ.
Yeah, seriously. And so basically graduated, went to Urban Glass, continued working. And
you're telling my story. Like I know how this comes out.
Yeah, well, it's just hard to make a living as an artist. It is. And then, it's hard to make a living as an artist who's trying to make work that is, in my mind, meaningful, cultural, representative of Afro-Latin culture. I mean, it's so art world. Come on. It's not really about that.
Right.
And I'm not making excuses, but it's just, it was hard to break into that world.
And representation was a lot harder then because we didn't have the intranet.
No, there was no internets back then. So it was tough. It was a little tough, but I kept doing my work, and I worked for other artists. I worked for other sculptors, and that kind of transitioned me into like the whole DJ thing, was where I DJ'd a few birthday parties for some friends in like small little bars and stuff. And
how long had you been out of school at that point when you started to do
it?
That?
Was a bit. Let me see, about 3 years.
Mhm.
3 years before I actually started DJing.
Yeah.
So, and I continued making art for many years too. You know, it's like I loved it and I wanted to make it, and so I did show at like Heller Galleries, like the main glass gallery of New York City. And, you know, he showed my work twice. I sold some work there. I was in a group show at the Brooklyn Museum and in Venezuela, Dominican Republic. I mean, I did some things with art, you know, and it's great. And for me, it's just check and did that.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I hear you.
And we didn't even talk about when I was a forest ranger.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Oh just for a summer. Chase the bear out of a campground.
What was the saying?
I've worn many hats in this life, man, and I'm still.
You have to, man. You have to. You
man.
know me.
I
wear many hats like every day now.
Seriously.
I made an occupation out of that. I was like, you know what? Instead of doing it like months at a time, let's just do it in one day. You know, just drink more coffee.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I didn't want like a jobby job. It's it's just not me. You know, I couldn't sit in an office for 8 hours.
Yeah, that's long enough.
I don't even know because I've never done it. And
it's not France, okay? We're talking about the U.S.
Right. You know, there's no siestas in America.
No,
nope. But I just didn't want that. I knew that I would not do well in that environment. So I
became a forest ranger.
I became no. I was still in college when I did that. It was for a summer. It was awesome. I'm like, if ever my life goes bad,
right? I know what to do.
I know, I really do. It's like my wife says, "You smell. Get out of here," or whatever. I'm like, "See you, babe. I'm going up to New Hampshire, back to the White Mountains, and I'm going to live with the bears."
Yep.
I loved it up there.
Nice. That's great.
But back to reality here, you know.
I'm doing my best to distract you today.
I know. You keep taking me away from the core of what I'm trying to say, which is good.
It's jiu-jitsu.
I know. So yeah, eventually I started DJing like friends' birthday parties, and I was noticed by a friend of a friend who was starting a Cuban party, and with live bands, and they needed a DJ to play in between sets and everything. And this was at Nell's, and this was back in like '98, so it was a while ago. And it was just when Buena Vista Social Club album came out. It was like Cuban music was big now, you know, at least on the mainstream, people knew about it. And I was already into it for many, many years. I mean, since my dad's record collection, and I would play it in college and stuff. And so I was like, yeah, let's do this. And I got a major gig at Nell's, and it was just so much fun. I had a lot of fun. And I was playing music I really cared about, and I was mixing it up between sets, but mainly Cuban music, playing new stuff while the bands were playing traditional son. I was playing like timba and son, and a little maybe a bachata here and a merengue there. But really, it was Cuban nights, and that was it. My life launched as DJ David Medina. El que te da, you know?
Okay, that's it. We're done. That's the end of the show.
That's it, baby.
Actually, we're gonna take a little break. We'll be back in a few.